Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, managing editor of Canada's Entrepreneur. Joining me today is Bruce Winder, who is a retail expert and analyst in Canada. Thanks, Bruce, for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Mario.
Well, we're going to talk about the Bay. Sad day on the weekend as it shut down. Just curious, when was the last time you were in there, and what was your impression when you walked around inside one of the stores?
Yeah, I was probably in the Bay just before they started their liquidation. I mean, I tried to get in the Bay on their final day on Sunday. I couldn't get in. I went to a local store and they'd already sold the fixtures and the merchandise, and they closed the store unless you were looking at jewelry. But yeah, before their liquidation, I went in, and obviously, it's just a semblance of what it used to be in its power days, and it's in its heydays when it was a power store, and not a lot of customers. A lot of vendors already left. There was a lot, you could tell the escalators weren't working, and, you could tell that it was a neglected retailer, unfortunately.
When you look at what's happening with all that property, maybe fill us in from what you've heard and learned about what's happening to all that retail space that you know they've given up.
Yeah, it's a mammoth amount of retail space. I mean, that's probably one of the hardest things beyond the employees side of it is just the fact that there's going to be so much retail space open. And remember, we're already sort of, licking our wounds from when Target left and when Sears left and from other retailers, right? We haven't fully filled all that space as well. So it's going to be, there's going to be different avenues for some of the stores. Ruby Lou, I believe, has cut a deal or is looking to cut a deal to buy 28 leases. We don't know exactly where they're going to be, but she's looking to come up with a new concept. In addition, RioCan has got approval to put their joint venture into bankruptcy, and their joint venture involved a lot of sort of the downtown stores, the heritage buildings. So now that they're going to put it into receivership, they can start to do something with that, sell it off, etc., or repurpose it. And there's also Primaris. Primaris REIT has also, I believe, unlocked five of the leases that they can do what they want to do with it. And then there's a number of bidders. We're still waiting to hear if Canadian Tire got a few leases, and there's probably a few other retailers who were looking to get some leases. But there's probably going to be a number of leases. I don't know what that number is going to be. Is it 30 or 50 that aren't spoken for, right? And that's really the big question mark. Landlords will have to look at a number of things, whether it's turning them into condominiums, breaking them up, and leasing them out to smaller retailers, putting a gym in, putting a pickleball court in, a car dealership. There's a lot of different options out there, but the bottom line, the common denominator is there's a lot of space up for grabs right now.
And you mentioned that, and I'm thinking here, I'm based in Calgary, and we've got CF Chinook Center there, and not only did they lose the Bay, but they also lost Saks there, so that's a massive
Mm.
space. Like, when you look across the board and all that space, is it possible that that stuff is going to be sitting empty for a while? Because I know for the Sears, for example, when Sears left, a lot of those spaces across the country weren't filled for years.
Exactly. No, it's a great point. I think we need to get ready for some eyesores out there where you're going to see select properties be vacant for a while. The other thing, too, that we have to consider is some of these properties are quite old and haven't been maintained. And the cost to upgrade these properties for a new tenant could be quite large. So that's going to be a bit of a barrier, if you will, for landlords to repurpose it or to release it. And it's going to be a barrier for other potential tenants. So it's not like the properties are all pristine and ready to be leased. There's a number of leasehold upgrades that need to happen. And again, that costs a lot of money. And then if you're a landlord, you have to think, okay, if I'm going to spend all this money, what kind of rent am I going to get in return for it? And when I do my financial analysis, is it going to make sense for me to invest this money? So that's one of the barriers here. But yeah, I do think so. I do think you're going to see a number of properties vacant for quite a while.
Now, you mentioned Canadian Tire, and we know that they bought the brand itself, the Bay brand. What do you think they're going to do with that?
Yeah, it's a great question. We don't know for sure. I mean, probably what they're going to do is they're going to launch an assortment, a focused assortment of their core sellers from the four stripe and the coat of arms merchandise and have that online. And then what they may do too is they may create a little aisle in some of their stores, like what they've done with Petco and with the Party City, and offer sort of a nice, really tight section of Bay merchandise. They may also say, you know what, we're gonna put the brand into our current assortments and kind of insert it into their line architecture, their brand architecture at some point, so that it's sort of a choice for consumers in a number of their leading categories. So we're gonna have to see. Time will tell. I do think there's opportunities down the road if you want to get aggressive by doing something for tourists, maybe at airports or different passage points like that. And also looking at, small boutique type stores, 5,000 square feet, in some malls. But I think that's sort of out of scope right now for Canadian Tire. I think they're going to focus on sort of doing what they do best and trying to insert the brand into their current operations.
Right, last question I have for you, and you did mention the Ruthie Lou and new department store concept possibly shaken out here in the future. What is the future of department stores in Canada in light of, Sears, the Bay, in Canada, in Nordstrom, Target, all of them? Both.
Yeah, I think the traditional department store as you and I knew it from, 30, 40, 50 years ago plus is gone. So the department store that was higher end merchandise, higher end service that carried all kinds of soft goods, hard lines, restaurants, etc. I think that's gone. I think this was probably the final one. I do think that there's room for folks who have a bit of a hybrid, folks like Simons and Holt Renfrew, who are still doing pretty good. They're not really a traditional department store. They're more, focusing on sort of select categories that used to be on the roster of department stores. I think when you broaden the definition of department stores, they still exist, but they're in the discount segment now. So you think about Walmart. Well, Walmart has a number of departments. You think about Canadian Tire, they have a number of departments, right? Amazon has a number of departments online. So I think just the definition have changed, but the old format that we knew from 100 years, the last 100 years, I think that's gone now.
Yeah, it's a shame, but c'est la vie. That's the changing trends in retail, right?
Yeah,
All right, super. Thanks so much, Bruce, for joining us today.
no problem.
All right,
My pleasure.
that was Bruce Winder, who is a retail analyst and an expert. I'm Mario Toneguzzi, managing editor of Canada's Entrepreneur. Thanks for joining us today.